Hello, my name is Leah Tudor, and this is a slideshow of my Mason and Rome journey. Let's start with the first week. In the first week of the Mason and Rome program, we visited many sites together as a class. As you can see by these pictures, the first place we visited together was the Colosseum. These were some of my favorite photos I took while there. I especially love the photo on the left, which is of me and my awesome roommate. After visiting the Colosseum, we were able to use our tickets to enter Palatine Hill and the Roman Forum later that day as well. I didn't think the Colosseum could be topped, but the Roman Forum was definitely my favorite. I mean, just look at that view. We also visited the Pantheon on our first week. I had walked by it before on a previous day, so I was really excited to see inside. The architecture was stunning, and the art was beautiful too. The picture on the right was one of my favorites. In addition to the group trips, I also ventured out on my own. I saw other famous sites like the Trevi Fountain, which luckily wasn't as crowded as I expected for the time that I went. I also tossed a coin into the fountain over my left shoulder to ensure that this wouldn't be my last time in Rome, as legend says. I later stumbled upon what has become my favorite study spot of all time, Cannoleria Siciliana. I always get the classic canola, but the pistachio one is delicious as well. 10 out of 10 recommend. I also visited some really cool museums. The picture on the left is at the Museum of Villa Torlonia, which was just a short 10-minute walk from my apartment. The room with the statues of the Muses was particularly amazing. I have read a lot about them before, and we even read about them in our literature class for Dante's Inferno. The picture on the right is from the Market and Forum of Torino, which is one of the many awesome museums we had free access to thanks to our MIC cards. The view was gorgeous, and the weather that day was especially nice. The first week was filled with so many amazing experiences, but the second week was even better. The main group trip we did for week 2 was to the Capitoline Museums. The art displayed there was unbelievably beautiful. There was so much to see that I was there for hours after the trip officially ended. Week 2 is also when we had our very first cooking class. We made homemade pasta and meatballs, which was super fun. I've never made pasta from scratch before, but the recipe was fairly simple. I'm excited to try making it again at home for my family. I also used my free time this week to explore more museums, as the first Sunday of every month has free entry for many sites in Rome. The picture on the left is from the National Roman Museum of Palazzo Massimo, and the picture on the right is from the Baths of Diocletiano. I had planned to see even more museums that day as well, but there was so much to see in just these 2 places alone that, yet again, there simply was not enough time. These pictures are 2 of my favorite free time adventures from this week. The picture on my left was my first real solo trip. I went by myself to see the Back to the Wood Pinocchio light show that I had been dying to see since I first arrived in Italy and saw posters for it everywhere. It absolutely blew my mind. Not only were there these massive inflatable lights of the story's characters, but there were also live actors you could interact with throughout the park. The actors even performed a musical number, which I think might have been my favorite thing of the whole night. The second picture is of my roommate and I at our very first karaoke drag show, which was an absolute blast. I sang 2 of my go-to karaoke songs, Call Me by Blondie and Girl on Fire by Alicia Keys. Some of my last free time adventures of the week were at this gorgeous rooftop bar and at the beach in Ostia. I'm really grateful to our host school, CLI Dante, for having one of its professors lead the beach trip. I even got to meet some students not in my own classes, which was really nice. The water was beautiful and the sun was shining. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect beach day. By week 3, I couldn't believe how fast time had passed. Week 3 is when we had our second cooking class. This was my favorite of the 2 cooking classes because not only did we get to make some amazing gnocchi, but we also got to make our own tiramisu, one for each of us. And I have a huge sweet tooth. My tiramisu was the best, if I do say so myself. Our last group trip for this week was to the Vatican Museum. This was one of my most anticipated visits, and it certainly did not disappoint. The guided tour was super informative, and seeing the Sistine Chapel in person was incredible. I wish I could have taken pictures, but I felt like I could stare at it for hours. St. Peter's Basilica, which is just a short distance away from the Vatican museums, was every bit as stunning, if not more so. I spent so long staring up at the ceiling in awe for the second picture that I actually got a crick in my neck. I still can't believe it's free to visit. I was also lucky enough to actually see a service being held, and the choir sounded absolutely ethereal. This week was also the first side trip I took. On the weekend, I went down to Naples with my roommate to see Pompeii and yet another light show. Pompeii was an indescribable experience. Getting to see the ancient ruins of the city in person is something I will never forget. Something else I will never forget is how much I walked that day. My legs were killing me by the end of it, but boy was it worth it. The light show was also phenomenal. This time the story was Alice in Wonderland, which is one of my all-time favorites. A fun fact about me is that whenever I travel to a different country, I always buy a copy of it in the native language. Another free time adventure I did this week was visit Trastevere. The picture on the right is from the Museo di Roma in Trastevere, which is one of the free locations included with the MIC card. The second picture is from the crypt under the Basilica di San Crisogono XII. It was only €3 to enter and had some amazing medieval frescoes and ancient sarcophagi. I couldn't believe how well preserved everything was. Getting to week 4 was a bittersweet moment. I was sad that the trip was almost over, but excited to see what was in store next. The last class trip we did together was to the Borghese Gallery, which had several different rooms to walk through with gorgeous statues and jaw-dropping paintings. The statue on the right is of Apollo and Daphne, one of my favorite stories from Ovid's Metamorphoses. There was also an enormous garden surrounding the gallery that was beautiful to walk through. It's the perfect kind of place to spend your day relaxing. This week was also the Pride Parade. Walking with the parade all the way from the initial party at Piazza della Repubblica to the after party near the Baths of Caracalla was definitely my favorite part. It was so great to see everyone laughing and celebrating together. The after party was a lot of fun too. I got to see some hilarious performances by drag queens as well as some fabulous lip syncs. These pictures are from Palazzo Barberini, one of the National Galleries of Ancient Art. This place had by far the most beautiful art I have ever seen. I ended up spending about the same amount of time looking at all the pieces they had displayed as I did walking around Pompeii. I honestly think I enjoyed it even more than the Vatican, which is saying something because I loved the Vatican. While the first picture is by no means one of my favorites in the gallery, I just had to get a selfie with my fellow Tudor. The second picture is of the Triumph of Divine Providence, a ceiling fresco by Pietro da Cortona. I never could have imagined I would get to see something this immensely beautiful in person. The gallery was so unbelievable that after I had finally walked through it all, I decided it wasn't enough and did it all over again. While the Galleria Corsini was the smaller of the two galleries of ancient art, it was still absolutely breathtaking. It was much more intimate and less crowded as well. I often had entire rooms to myself just to stand and appreciate the art. I also loved how each room was color coordinated. My favorite room was the yellow one, as it had the most colorful paintings and elaborate ceilings. And that was my journey in Rome. Thank you for watching my video. If you want to see other students' journeys, check out our class Instagram page at Mason Italian.